A very good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having patience to wait for us. I thought it would be a good opportunity to give the participants some time to join us. So without further ado, I'll start shortly. So a very good evening and thank you for coming to the ASEAN Energy Business Forum. Our discussion today will be on data sovereignty, digital trust, and national critical information infrastructure in Malaysia's energy sector. So I'll also be giving you an overview of what's happening globally in terms of cybersecurity, the regulatory controls, and also the compliances that you need to comply to under NCII, the penalties, but more importantly, the challenges that the energy sector faces and the solutions that are available. Again, some of these solutions, I'd want you to think about it because they are actually being implemented in mature democracies. I will also go into the thought process of why these challenges matter in the energy sector, and I will give you solutions. I will also show you attacks. I will also show you the cybersecurity landscape and overview with regard to the energy sector. Again, the last portion of my discussion will be a solution perspective where we give you a solution, but it doesn't necessarily mean that this is the only solution. There are a few solutions that you could actually put in place to mitigate the risks. And lastly, I will finish off by giving some recommendations that you could take to your energy commission, where this energy commission could be helpful to utility players, and hopefully they would come up with a framework that enables the utility players to be effective in their management and their business. Right? Let me introduce myself. My name is Ramana. I've been with Gamuda DNeX Cloud, joined recently since this year. And I'm the head of cybersecurity and program delivery at Gamuda DNeX. So without further ado, the dual imperative. The biggest challenge that the energy sector faces is the dual imperative where there are two demanding points of view that need to be met. And the worldview that is occurring today is because of growth. There is tremendous growth in demand for energy and competitiveness in the region. Everybody's fighting, clamoring for who grows the data centers, who grows the business, who caters to the demand. So the challenge of the fragmentation is there. And what you want to see is that the ASEAN region itself, in projecting the economy and its growth, it's expected that it will be a $2 trillion business in 2030. So it's not chump change, it's not billions, it's $2 trillion business by 2030. So the key point is that there are fragmentation issues in the grid, there's cybersecurity vulnerabilities, there's a mosaic of government regulations. So these goals are not mutually exclusive, but you are linking both of them. So the duality is always about, on one hand, you want to digitalize, the governments and everyone wants to digitalize. There's a huge digitalization that's going across the ASEAN landscape. But on the other hand, there is decarbonization. You want to be able to meet your climate goals. You want to be able to meet your environmental protection or ESG goals that you have as an enterprise. So data centers, again, are the bedrock of this demand. So you are causing a situation because you are actually having two different demands trying to clash with each other. So how do you meet your climate goals when you have consumption, right? And the key pointer that I'd like to speak to you all is this point here. The challenge is everybody talks, but whether you walk the talk. The consumption and decarbonization creates a challenge that you have to actually address, which is 70% of ASEAN's energy sector and electricity is still fossil fuel. right? So we will go through this, and this surge in demand creates huge challenges, especially for new nations that are struggling, because they need to also be able to, for example, give their population an exposure to meet these demands. We will also talk about exploring the challenges that are linked and bring a comprehensive solution. We want to be able to provide you the closed loop and give you a system that ensures sovereignty is met and also brings operational excellence. Right. So the next deck gives you the actual growth factors with regard to digitalization, growth, and the drivers. So if you see here, the key point being this here and also the one here, you can't see much here, but I will give you an overview what the drivers are. The drivers are the proximity to the local market. So where the usage of AI, where the usage of gaming, the usage of fintech, cloud services, mainly are routing from US traffic and Singapore traffic. So if you really see, this proximity to the local market shows why Singapore is actually the highest in terms of usage of electricity consumption. If you see there, it is 1,000 megawatts. So if you see the consumption, you can see a tiny red dot, but it's consuming so much, right? Why? Because the surge in demand for data centers, and you really need to understand these investments by the hyperscalers. So in terms of having the investment going on in Singapore and Malaysia and all the neighboring countries gives you this demand. I just wanted to also tell you that your neighboring countries, not in ASEAN, but in places like India, has just got for example, a Google data center there that's, I think, 12 billion or 15 billion investment. So it's huge, exponentially huge. So what I mentioned earlier, where the trillions of dollars of growth is correct, it's projected. So the next key driver is the data residency regulation. So the regulations are also driving this growth. And lastly, the diversification of risk is also driving this growth. So the key takeaway from this visual is decarbonization needs to keep pace with demand. You can't just allow demand to overstep decarbonization. And the way of doing this is to incentivize your renewables. Because only by governments incentivizing your renewables will you be able to then challenge the digitalization. Because you can reduce the footprint by allowing companies to do green energy. So Singapore is leading with 1,000 megawatts. And what is interesting to note, and this is the best point that you want to understand, the biggest two countries with the growth for DCs is Thailand and Malaysia. Okay? Thailand actually has a growth of 550% projection. So that's why you see this going up. So Thailand is 550%, followed closely by Malaysia at 500%. That is because the hyperscalers and DCs are going to be in these two countries, in ASEAN. So what's the challenge that you face? The constraints of the industry. And the main constraints are the grid modernization that occurs, and this adoption of distributed energy resources such as solar, photovoltaic components for meeting the demands of your EV nations complicates everything, because they actually give you a challenge where, because of growth, you create something known as attack surfaces, because you increasingly have huge grids all around the country. But are these adequately protected? What are the systems that protect it? Are there industrial design systems that are competitively protected with cybersecurity? All these are the questions that you need to ask. So the adoption creates a demand that the current infrastructure is ill-equipped to handle. That's the key point. You also want to understand that modernization is also open to vulnerabilities of cyber threats. The energy sector today, especially in Malaysia, they have created a national critical infrastructure sector or segment where they've actually classified 8, 9 different industries. In fact, actually it's 11 industries into these NCII categories. So it's a prime target. Because why it's a prime target? Because it's vulnerable, and the smarter the grid, the more the vulnerability. Why? Because the smarter the grid, the more the interconnectedness. You are more interconnected than ever before with a smart grid. So the bigger the threat. That is what I want you to understand. So when you look at power generation to transmission to even distribution, the attack surface increases. And because it increases, there are more weak points that can be exploited. So you need to understand this. And that is why successful cyber attacks can be quite catastrophic. They can be catastrophic because if they get to your grid, especially your backbone, they can actually use different methods to bring the entire grid down. So you need to be proactive rather than reactive. This is the key takeaway. So these are prime targets. So whenever you see things like this being your grid, these are the key targets that the attackers are looking for. And as you go, you want to understand what is data sovereignty. So data sovereignty needs to be made or understood between both different types, whether data sovereignty and residency have a clear distinction between each other. So you want to understand what is sovereignty over data residency. You want to be sure of which type of data is kept where. So a nation can only exercise a legal authority if the data is physically located within its jurisdiction. We are proposing an air-gap solution because that gives you a fully self-contained on-premise cloud platform which enables full disconnection from the internet. That gives you the perspective of what an isolated air-gap environment is. So you want to address both concepts by ensuring that a physical location of the data is also being subjected to legal authority of the host nation. So for example, you can't say, I can have sovereignty of another country when you are not actually located in that country. You can't say that. So you need to ensure that your data remains within the boundaries of that country. So countries are increasingly passing laws, and I will go through some of them, that govern how these organizations collect data, store data, process data. And we also want to share with you the penalties for non-compliance, which we can have a good look about. And don't be frightened. It's not you that's going to jail. It's others that are culpable that are going to jail. Then we will also give you an idea of what are the substantial penalties. Again, you must understand there is a evolution. Doesn't mean the regulator has given you fines, they're going to immediately fine you. No. They are going to put an exercise where they allow you enough time to be able to comply to those laws, but at a certain time there will be a cutoff. Then there will be a enforcement. So if you're focused on energy and if you designate it as a critical national infrastructure, this understanding between what is sovereignty and what is residency is important. But I want to bring your attention to the solution, yeah? So the solution is, okay, this is the statement between sovereignty and residency. What are potential solutions? So one is the air gap, which I've already mentioned, and it addresses both. It addresses sovereignty and also residency. But the more important one is something that we see in Europe. So this is not done in ASEAN, this is done in Europe, but I want to bring attention to this. They have a method called a data embassy model developed by Estonia. So if anyone's been to Estonia, you will understand it is one of the most digitalized nation in the world. I would arguably, I've not been, but I have friends who've been to Estonia. And I know that every single government process, for example, is paperless. So if you really want to see what's a great digitalization success story, Estonia is one of them. So Estonia actually developed this data embassy model where it's an innovative approach. it takes an approach where you have a digital continuity, but you also have a sovereignty in the face of threats. And how they do it is by doing this. So they actually have taken their population register, their businesses, and also their land registers and given it to a trusted partner, Luxembourg. And why Luxembourg is because they are also very mature from an infrastructure point of view. So Luxembourg is also very well known in telco. They are also very well known and capable in terms of infrastructure distribution. So that is why the Estonian model is that they have actually chosen to have a backup. So for example, why they do this? The data embassy model addresses attacks. If Estonia is attacked, they have a backup in Luxembourg. You get what I mean? So they're actually very smart because they chose not just a legal, but also a technological framework. The more important one is this, technological framework because of extensive availability in a trusted partner. See the keywords, extensive availability. Why? Because they have huge networks. They have transmission lines, they have networks, and they have a trusted partner. They have a G2G understanding. Okay, lastly, what we are proposing is Malaysia can be a potential data embassy. Why? What we are saying here is that all things ASEAN, it is right in the center, and you do have all the DC players here, all the hyperscalers are here, and you have what is known as generally politically stable compared to some of our neighbors, and we also want to say it's tectonically stable. You don't have earthquakes, for example. In ASEAN, you have a lot of countries with earthquakes, but Malaysia, you don't have. So Malaysia could eventually, with the data growth that you see in the previous slide, can be a data embassy specialist catering to the demand of its neighbors. Right. So what's the regulation like? If you see, there is this example that I'm giving. So you can see the maturity in terms of the Data Protection Law, the Cybersecurity Act, the localization requirements, and the governance framework. So if you see, the key act that we have is 854, and 854 is actually a Cybersecurity Act 2024, which has updated with this specific convention, and it covers a lot of this cybercrime, information security areas. So I will show you in a nutshell later, and I'll also give you the opportunity to question us on this dialogue. Very welcome to question any questions on this act. So if you see, there is some fragmentation because some of it have not stated explicitly the localization requirements. Yeah. So for example, what type of data that you need to ensure that you keep for national security is not explicit. Mature democracies in Europe, if you ask me by experience, explicitly stated out. Yeah. So just giving you some examples. Some countries have it better, some countries may be still evolving. Okay, what's 854? So again, this is Cybersecurity Act 2024. Don't need to go into sections. What you need to understand it, if you really look at the section 16, you need to do these things. You need to do an annual risk assessment. You need to do biannual audits. There is mandatory, keyword here, mandatory reporting of incidents to NACSA, right? Adherence to code of practice. Licensing requirement for cybersecurity providers. So if we are a cybersecurity provider, we need to have a license. And then you need to establish the functions of the NCII. So what your regulator needs to do, in your case, is the Energy Commission. The Energy Commission needs to be able to do 1, 2, and 3, which is designate the NCI entities, prepare the code of practice, and implement these directions. What are the clear directions for utility companies? So in a nutshell, that's what it is. And this one's the most exciting one. I'm just going to give some time for you all to digest the key points. I want you to see especially the penalties. I'm sorry if it's a bit small, but I'll just show you by the pointer what are the clear ones and the ones that are a bit frightening. So the key one is this one, yeah? If you do not report a cybersecurity incident, what will happen is you will be jailed for 10 years or 500,000 or both. So this is what will happen. But again, as I said to you, it's phased. The government will not immediately enforce this. What they are going to do is they're going to make sure you have adequate provisions to be able to manage it effectively before they actually start doing it cold turkey. So again, the key ones I will mention is incident reporting. You cannot not report an incident. You need to report an incident. And then the other key ones is failing to do a complete audit and submitting it to your Energy Commission or your CEO first and then getting it approved. Another key one is this, NCII utility. So if you fail to implement standards and processes, again, you will get the maximum penalty. But this, your regulator has to tell you. So most likely your Energy Commission will be involved here in mentioning this to you. The rest, again, they are not as serious as the two that I've mentioned. But again, some of it, like this one, is definitely quite, punitive. Again, failing to conduct a cybersecurity risk assessment. How many of your companies actually do a full risk assessment? I mean, I was in KPJ previously. I did it. I was the first one who did such an assessment. No one, my predecessors did not do such an assessment. But again, it's time, resources. These are some of the constraints. So fines, suspension or revocation of licenses, but more importantly, you have to understand, this is not just to penalize you. You must understand there's reputational damage. If you get hacked or if you get breached, the reputational damage far surpasses the penalty the commission or the government, NCII, is going to do on you. So your reputational damage is more important. You need to look at that. I will have a small deck on that. I will show you later what is the damage to energy sector if you don't follow, you get hacked. And you will see this same statement. Again, there's linkages here between what you are actually being regulated on and actual international standards. All right, so your governance priority. So what is the priority? How do you do this? So again, the board level, you need to say that you can't deny the fact now that the board can't say that I don't know. You have to know. They are compelling you to know what's going on, right? So continuous compliance monitoring. Again, this is what the code of practice is defined by your 854. So it defines, your governance, your identity, your protection, detection, response, recovery. So all of this is already stated out by the Act. And then what you need to do is you need to very clearly look at the NCSC because they are going to be your national council. Your NCII is the key agency. And then, of course, your Energy Commission. Your Energy Commission is the green one here, is the sector lead. So they need to give you direction. Actually, the last time I had a discussion with them, I actually don't know whether they actually have this clearly mandated. I believe they do, but you need to check from your organization, if you are a utility, what is exactly the mandate from your Energy Commission, right? And then what you are is NCII entities as mentioned by them. Sovereignty and why it matters. So digital trust is enabled by 3 pillars. What and how it is. So what is trust? How do you enable trust? How do you get trust in either public sector or private sector? So you need to really ask, how is this trust enabled? So I'm going to say that trust or digital trust is predicated by the 3 pillars. What are these 3 pillars? The first pillar is data governance. You need to ensure your data governance governs everything to do with data. As we said in our previous discussion as a panel, data cuts across all every sector. So you need to have governance on that data. Second pillar is the cybersecurity and management pillar, where you need to manage all the cybersecurity elements. And the third one is your compliance and enforcement. Again, Malaysia is well known for, coming up with very great frameworks. But again, we do have some challenges when it comes to enforcement. So we do, want all of you to really look at the enforcement pillar, because it is important for you to actually enable trust. So if you believe that something needs to be trustworthy, whether it's a solution or service, then these are the values that it needs to be looked at: secure, transparent, reliable, and consistent, while providing a seamless, frictionless experience. So I wanted to pose to you some key points. People say they don't trust public institutions. I don't think that it is about not trusting the institutions. I think it's just that they don't trust the people leading the institutions, right? Actually, public believes in the institutions. I still do believe that a ministry or certain government departments, people believe in them. But it's difficult to build trust when you deal with incompetency on a daily basis. This is the point that I'm trying to make. Trust cannot be bought, sold, or designed. Trust must be earned. It only comes when relationships are nurtured correctly in a trusted manner. So that's the fact that I want to leave with you on what cyber sovereignty is about. Again, this is the most exciting one. Right? What's the grid like? What do you see? Again, I'd like to appreciate and give a shout out to my colleagues at Google Mandiant. So they're Google cybersecurity guys. In fact, some of the decks that you're going to see is very sensitive. Again, keep the discussion in the room. I'll give you a chance to Q&A me later. But I'm going to show you the facts as they are, warts and all. Warts and all. So the facts as they are. These are your targets, and these are your sources globally. Okay? Again, who's the target? Who is the source? And preferably, if you take pictures, don't share. This is not to be shared. You can take for yourself, but not for others. Yeah? Again, the best of threat intel, this is the snapshot of it. So if you're ASEAN Energy, you know who your attackers are. Okay, what's our cybersecurity score? So just to give you an overview, Malaysia is quite low. For example, Europe, US, your threat score is actually 8. So Europe is actually 8 point something. Most countries in, I give you an example, US is 8 point something. So how this score is done is you have a frequency of these 3 areas. Yeah, you have financial, you have operations and hacks, and you have a combined score. So that is how these scores are received. So Malaysia's cyber score is actually quite low compared to other countries, but it's still high enough. And what you are seeing here is, I'm showing here frequency and magnitude of different types of hacking. So what you want to notice is FIN means these are financial sector. They are targeting the financial sector. Then you're looking at the type of hack and these are the state actors that are trying to come in. That means they are state-run actors that are trying to hack you. Okay? Now, what is cyber warfare? Cyber warfare, again, is a combination of the terms war and cybersecurity. So they're using means of using technology, information technology, to do an exercise of war against you, bringing down your grid and so on. So it involves nation-state-backed offensive actors in cyberspace. Again, I want to clearly distinguish between cyber warfare, cyber terrorism, and hacktivism. The usual ones that you get, the scams and all of that, those are hacktivism. So what is cyber warfare? Again, cyber attacks by nation, straightforward, on your computer networks, or your grid in this manner, because you are energy players, this is your grid. So they will attack your grid and they will disrupt, damage, or destroy its infrastructure for other reasons, military reasons mainly, and political reasons. So going next, you will see that, they are actually looking at things like cyber terrorism and hacktivism. They are different from cyber warfare. And what this means is cyber terrorism is agenda-based. They are based on agenda. It's not by state actors. So what they do is it's either political, religious, or economic, and they use cyber attacks to advance these objectives. Their objective could be as simple as, I want to disrupt a country's economic position. So that's not truly cyber warfare all the way. That could be cyber terrorism also, right? And lastly, what do they want to do? They actually want to cause disruption and harm. They actually have an objective of causing disruption and harm. And they most likely will have either another group that they could coerce, or actually weaponize another group to be able to do this. So sometimes this also happens that way. And a hacktivist may also aim to do a disruption of service. Doesn't mean only state actors do cyber terrorism. You could also have that, but the clear distinguished difference is that it does not intend to cause harm. They actually don't intend to cause harm, but sometimes they can cause harm, huh? Right. Okay, this is also from the security guys over on the Google side. So if you notice why we've given you this map, we want to say that the actor here is APT44. It's a nation state. I can't mention which state, but we want to understand what are the energy targets. Oops. Right? Okay, so just to bring your attention, these are the energy grid attacks that have happened in 2015. Why it is significant is because we've never seen this kind of attacks. But today, in today's landscape, you don't nampak these kind of attacks. So the entire energy grid went down in those countries, yeah? So what are these? Okay, so the lesson learned from the OT attacks. Most of these attacks come from your operational technology. That means from your industrial manufacturing sector, your SCADA and your ISC. Yeah, your primary targets is always your SCADA and your ISC, and also your DER. So I just want you to know this. And I just want you to know that these campaigns have been ongoing since 22. Now, Caddy Wiper is not a method. Caddy Wiper is a gang. It's a cabal, okay? It's a huge group of people, and they are known as Caddy Wiper. What they do is they take down power grids. You can see. Of course, they take down a lot of other infrastructure. You can look at nations, you can look at transportation, but they also take down power grids. That's why we want you to know that they don't just target your government, they target also mainly your electricity grids. So how they do it, yeah? So this is a very interesting one. So I wanted to share with you the information that we have. Again, it's OT attack. It's operational, right? So they use operational techniques. What they do is they look for your ICS, your industrial control systems. Again, very specific industrial control systems. That's what they're targeting at. They're looking at your control systems. So you need to look at certain techniques so they can actually, if you really look at it, your substation, your circuit breakers, they can actually attack your circuit breakers. What this does is, the standard issue that happens is a power outage. I'm not necessarily saying yesterday it's because of a hack, no. But I'm just saying that, this is what happens. But usually when they take it down, what will happen is your circuit breakers will have a big, shutdown. And then, of course, if it's cyber warfare, they will attack you. But in this case, no lah. But we're giving you an example of how they do it. This is the method that they do, you see. So this is what is known as a Caddy Wiper group. that does this in your own IT environment. Again, the next one will be an analysis of how a sandworm attack is done on substations. So I chose to show you this because, again, I want you to see what is the process done by an incident to attack a life cycle. So they actually attack you with intelligence. They're not silly attacks, right? These are very constructed attacks. They actually compromise, and you know what's the best part is the top security firm in the world doesn't know how they actually got the compromise done. If you notice here, it's unknown. So I want you to know that the method is not known, even to the top security experts. So you're talking about an intelligence here that's radically different. They are motivated. They're very motivated to do what they want to do. So that's what I want you to understand. And, they escalate the privileges, they move laterally in your system, and then they finally complete your mission. What is the mission? They take down your grid, they take down your substation first. When they take down the substation, they take down your components of your grid. And your grid can't keep the power because your substation is taken down. Okay? What are the predictions for 2025? So I'll give you some predictions of what's going to happen. So if you see, the biggest type of attacks for 25 and 26 onwards will be the analysis of time to exploit, which is, instead of 5 days now, we're looking at 1 day. So imagine 5 years ago, you had 32 days to go and analyze something and fix it. Today is 5 days. I will tell you, 26 will be 2 days or 1 day. So today you know the vulnerability, tomorrow you get attacked. So how many people are actually looking at the vulnerability on a daily basis? That is what I'm trying to get across to you. So this average is getting less and less and less when you talk about end-day exploitation. We talk about end-day exploit means from the moment you discover a vulnerability, it could be a system, an operating system, a SCADA interface, ISE vulnerability, immediately patching must happen by the next day. If you don't patch the next day, what will happen is your entire grid will be compromised. So what we want to show here is in 2021, it was 6 months. You see how fast this thing is moving? That means in 2021, you had 3 to 6 months to fix something. But today, I will tell you, you have only 5 days or 3 days. And tomorrow in 26, you only have 1 or 2 days. If you don't fix it in a day, you will be attacked. Okay, what's the biggest threat to people like utility players is malware. So InfoStealer malware has had a surge. We have seen tremendous, heist of stolen identities, credentials, and this has various impacts in intrusions. So you have, even low-skilled threat actors trying to do this because also the advent of AI is allowing people to pick tool sets from the dark web and come and implement this quickly. So your IT teams need to also be a bit smarter. We need to employ people with capability. Next. Okay, this is what I mentioned, yeah? Your national impact cost is running into the tens of millions. You're looking at price, and you're looking at penalties, and you're looking at the maturity, yeah? So what this means is, what is your general investment cost? It's going to be only roughly something like this. But this is your penalty for non-compliance, the 200,000 and 500,000 that I was mentioning to you. And this is what I want you to see. I want you to see the rate. I want you to recognize that we have a fiduciary duty as energy utility players to be responsible for a lot more than just energy. As I mentioned in the panel earlier, together with my panelists, Ashraf and the rest of the team, if we don't look at it from this point of view, there is something known as a cascading effect. The cascading effect of yesterday was what? Everything went down, right? The fact is that transportation, logistics, healthcare, chaos, right? And people were saying, hey, don't go back home. I got a call saying, don't come back because, everything's blackout here. So these are some of the cascading effects. And it's very debilitating because it brings a country down to its knees. So again, the national impact cost is what you need to see. You need to have accountability and consequences. So the sector lead, which is your energy commission, needs to really be responsible. And the cost of this is your national impact. It causes national impact. That's what we want you to know. Again, my final one on this section is actually for you to understand your adversary. Why I want you to understand your adversary is because if you're a utility player, you need to understand how they think. This is how they think. They are motivated. They have sophistication and persistence. They are motivated by a spectrum of goals, financial, espionage, sometimes it's geopolitical also. They just suka want to bring your grid down because they can say, hey, I managed to do it, right? So it's various reasons, but motivation is very important to understand. What do they want to do and why they want to do it, right? So what's evolving? So you can see the nations, the threat is actually changing. You have multiple threat actors and nation states. There are different procedures, mainly TTPs here, to find new points of entries. And lastly, if you see the path of least resistance, the attackers will seek the easiest path. Again, I want to bring your attention to this. The easiest path, what's the easiest path? Is your DER. Why your DER is your easiest path? Because you have, remember I put the challenge to you in the first slide. What is the challenge? Is digitalization. Everybody wants to grow, but everybody doesn't realize when you want to grow, you start increasing your DER. And when you increase your DER, it's a huge attack surface. So they will leverage social engineering, they will target peripheral systems. Yeah? They won't attack the main grid, they will attack the edge. And lastly, this has already been explained. From 6 months today is down to 3 days or 5 days. So you need to patch everything. When the moment you find a vulnerability, it's all about the speed to patch it. That's a clear point that you need to figure out. So you must always know what is the motivation, right down to the vulnerabilities being exploited today. Next, I'd like to say that Gamuda has a potential solution. One of the case studies that we're going to show you and run through with you quickly in the next 10 minutes is the full stack approach to sovereignty is both a platform and an infrastructure as a service. What the platform is that it's a huge infrastructure that Gamuda helps to build. We are partnering Google. And as you know, the Google DC is being built by Gamuda. So that's the physical infrastructure. But we're also happy to say that we have the software stack, and the software stack is actually Google Distributed Cloud. So there's an investment by Gamuda to invest in the future of the GDC because of this reason, because it's secure, and we will walk you through what are the benefits of such a system or platform. Okay, the first thing that you need to understand is it's totally disconnected from the network. So if you see this here, the public cloud is not available. It's disconnected from the internet. So what is Google Distributed Cloud Air Gap? Again, it's a complete stack. This is a basic idea of showing you how the data center, the IT operations, the support, security, and reliability operation is run using this GDC. So it's GDC Air Gap. Again, the nomenclature showing air gap is because it's fully isolated. It's isolated from the internet. And the reason for that is what you saw earlier, all those challenges of ransomware, malware, and so on. Next. Again, we want you to understand that Google is an ecosystem builder. They don't just build a single point of view. They give you an entire ecosystem. They not just own the software stack, but what we wanted you to know is the differentiation between AWS, Google, Oracle, or Azure is that they don't have the network. For example, Microsoft doesn't own undersea cables. Google does. Google does. And some of the differences is that it is already networked for resilience. The entire stack, the network, the platform is built for resilience, is built for high availability. So they're giving you a principle, they're giving you a philosophy. It is an ethos. So it's not just, a bunch of software or a platform. They're giving you the entire network. And one of the things that you can identify with, I believe everyone uses YouTube, right? And most of you might use Gmail, or at least might have used Gmail. So I ask you this question. When was the last time you had a problem with your YouTube or your Gmail? It doesn't ever go down, right? You could have a problem with your ISP, but you could never have a problem with the YouTube or the Gmail, especially if your ISP is up. Why? Have you ever asked the question why? This is why. Okay? The reason is this: 42 regions, 127 zones, network edges, subsea cables, and they also plan to be totally net zero by 2023. So it's already net zero, and they have further goals on this. To just give you an idea, why all workloads cannot use the public cloud. Now, these are the reasons why you cannot use the public cloud. Because some workloads, some of your data needs to be sovereign, needs to be secret, needs to be kept in a vault. You can't reveal certain types of data to everyone. So these are the clear reasons of regulatory compliance, local data processing, your latency and speed, and your survivability. What I come to tell you is that the ecosystem provided by Google focuses on your survivability. That's what's key. And the next principle is important. What is sovereignty and how does it apply to this stack? So sovereignty comprises of 3 areas. Data sovereignty, what that means is you have a right to your own data. No one else can tell you how to use your data. But the challenge today in Malaysia is someone tells you, I want your data, but doesn't tell you how they're going to use it, right? So the platform itself is enabled that way. You can decide how you want to keep control, how you want to access your own data, because it's isolated. So if you want to understand what it is, you can see here data sovereignty requires all these principles. Again, the software sovereignty means your software is kept air-gapped. You can run workloads without dependencies. So for example, the difference with a public cloud is that in the public cloud, you're actually running with these workloads which are connected to those dependencies. They are dependent on some other processes. So if those processes break, it will break you also. Okay, and lastly, operational sovereignty. And this is very key, yeah? Again, we are all Malaysian. There is no foreigner sitting in our office. And I have clear instruction from my CEO. We are going to employ Malaysians. We are Malaysians first and foremost. I'm happy to tell you that we will be supporting this Malaysia First agenda. And that is key because sovereignty means you don't want to have your data either in another region like the public cloud or some other operator in another country. I'm not necessarily saying you can't trust them, but how can you trust a foreigner over your own data? You've got to ask yourself that question. It's a serious question, right? This is what public cloud is. Public cloud today is your data given to someone else to manage. This platform doesn't allow you to do that. It sits in your environment, it sits in your hands, it gives you back your controls. It democratizes the data and sovereignty that you need to do to maintain your integrity. Right? there. What the stack is, again, we're happy to say that Google has actually invented the wheel. You don't need to go and create a wheel because they've already invented it, they've already packaged it in such a way. What it really is cloud in a box. This cloud in a box is a full stack enablement. This enables, your AI to be built for anywhere within that domain. It is a cloud in a box concept. It's not on the internet, it is fully air-gapped and isolated. It has security end-to-end. Again, this is the key point. Yeah? I'm going to also give you some cues on what it truly is in terms of it's so secure because it's built ground up, secure by design. And I'm happy to say that Google has actually achieved one of the highest certifications, military grade. Just to say to you, Department of Defense in US uses this platform. It is FedRAMP high PATO. What it means is it's very secure, very highly credible in terms of providing you full security. And lastly, why is it a full stack? Is because you can also do your compute and your data analytics. Next, these are clear reasons why you want to look at. What are the provisions that you want to understand? So if you want to know why you need to look at this kind of principles is, the privacy theme of transparency and control of data, the decision is to move data to the cloud, actually comes down to an ability to trust someone. So you can actually control your own data. Even Google doesn't have access to your data. Only you have access to that data. So you have, in effect, the capability to actually decide what you want to do with your own data. And, your data and applications are available when you need them. When you acknowledge that you can invest more, this is how it is built into all aspects of your business. Your data protection is core to everything that we do. That means in Google, what you want to do is you want to build a stronger defense. You want to enhance those partnerships. You want to make sure that your protection is everything that you do on the system. You want to also satisfy your compliance, your regulatory compliance, and your requirements. You want to ensure that, your cloud in a box is offered as a powerful tool to make your compliance teams function easier. And lastly, you can progress to your environmental and social goals. Tomorrow, there is a discussion on inferencing in AI. Together with Google, I'll be also expanding the whole technical issue of how this inferencing is done using a better method that is more efficient. Because right, the challenge of AI is that if it's not controlled, you will have consumption, unbridled consumption. So tomorrow, Hannah, I'm happy to say that Hannah, the MD of Google, will be joining us if you're interested in the discussion. We will actually be going into detail of inferencing with AI and how you can actually create efficiencies by doing certain things. Right. My key takeaway for you today, the audience, before we open up for questions, is that, we want to make some recommendations to ASEAN. What can ASEAN do as a group that can, influence the strategy makers, the policy makers? So we want to advocate sovereignty by design. You want to be able to incentivize the technology solutions. You want to embed the sovereignty and security from the foundation layer rather than retrofit. So you want to embed it from ground up. So you want it to be a key point. So one of the solutions I've shared here is the on-premise isolated air-gap model. The other one is the data embassy model that you could actually go and have a look at. Don't believe me, go have a look at what Estonia is doing. Read up on it. You can, we can share those ideas, and feel free to connect across to me if you want to understand a little bit more how this data embassy works, because we could be one in the future. Because if we are expanding on DCs, we could actually be the data embassy of ASEAN. Again, we want to foster public-private initiatives. A good example is Gamuda. Gamuda works in a lot of key infrastructure projects. The partnership model enables strategic development. It enables the digital infrastructure. And Gamuda is big even on AI Academy. They have actually gone into people and they believe in people. So it's a tremendous opportunity and example that how private sector with their engineering and technical expertise can partner with the government to address national mandates. So we urge ASEAN to look at private companies that can actually not just be vendors, but be strategic partners in building this infrastructure, both physical and digital, required for this transformation. And we want them to, champion the sustainable digital future. We want, for example, if you look at renewable energy goal, you want to understand the CRESS, the Corporate Renewable Energy Supply and Scheme. You want this to be explored and implemented region-wide to ensure that data center adoption contributes and does not detract from decarbonization. So you understand that there is a flux, there's a digitalization versus decarbonization. So we want to invite people to look at that because you want to see how you can ensure these data centers have standards. They actually enhance your decarbonization. And lastly, you want to ensure the energy sector needs to collaborate binding standards. You have now a fragmented society, ASEAN landscape. You want to make sure that grid management, control systems, critical operations are done in a structured manner. You want to address the current regulatory gaps, the technical gaps, where there's no clear guidance on how you secure AI in smart grids. The AI needs to be also secured in smart grids so that you can prevent the vulnerabilities, reduce the exploits, mitigate the risks. You want to also provide clear requirement for technology providers to develop tailored schemes. Again, I bring to your attention the SCADA gap, the industrial design gap and vulnerabilities. So you want to bring players, invite them, and engage with them rather than detract them. So you want to incentivize all of this. Again, regulatory interoperability doesn't exist, so we also implore ASEAN to take leadership in terms of advocating and developing harmonized standards. So these standards need to be harmonized into a complete, comprehensive policy. Lastly, I open the floor to any Q&As. You want to give me a question or two, anything on the story that we shared today? Yes. Ashraf. Yeah. Good question. Mm-hmm.
National grid and water infrastructure is basically being attacked on a daily basis.
Yes.
And their score is 8, as you mentioned, 8 something.
8.8, yes.
So, we are small enough not to be targeted like US, but at score 2.2, if we are just a little on the target, we are done. So, yeah.
So let me give you an analogy. I think it's best that I also click back to the key points here. Thank you, Ashraf. It's a fantastic question. I think it's a good opportunity to really look at that in a big way. So let me go back to, just give me a moment. I just want to give you that tag that's most important. Yeah. Sorry. So if you notice the exponential growth, right? So these two, this one, okay, if you see 2029, it's going to be plus 8.2 for ASEAN. And if you see here, 550%, and Malaysia is 500% growth. So the answer is when your DERs and when your, for example, solar farms, you see a lot of people are buying EVs today. There's a lot of buzz about, renewables. So what this essentially does is it create demand. So when you have demand, what happens is your attack surface vector increases. So when your attack surface vector increases, you guess what happens to your 2.2? Your 2.2 then becomes a 4 or a 5 overnight. So why US is 8.8 and how the other ASEAN nations are. Okay, here's the next kicker, yeah? So US is 8.8 because, again, coming back to the question on interconnectedness, I mentioned earlier on one of the decks, the more you create smart grid, the more your attack surface or vector increases. So the smarter your grid, the more you are interconnected. Interconnected means simply you're connecting every single component on the grid. Could be turbines, could be power generation, could be a lot of those kind of things. So what then happens? Your attack surface just increased by 500%, right? You see, your growth, your growth is 500%. I'm sorry, the visual is small, but I'm saying to you, your Malaysia growth is 500%, your Thailand is 550%, your Singapore growth is only 30% or 20%. So what is going to happen to the cybersecurity score? Your 2.2 is just going to go overnight to 4 point something or 5. That's exactly what's going to happen.
Low is better, is it?
Low is better. The higher the score, what the higher the score means is that you attack more. That's why US is 8, and that's why Europe is 8. Europe is 8, US is 8, because they attack on a daily basis. Because US is attack on a daily basis, and I bet with you it's a utility, right? Yeah, so it's a utility. Why a utility? Easier to attack, large attack surface, right? So instead of financial institutions, they're going to take utilities. Why? Easy to go in. You saw another deck that I had, right? The point of least resistance. Where is it easier to go in? That's where they will choose the path. It's the same like water. The water always flows at the point of least resistance. It always tries to find the fastest path down because of gravity, right? Same with attackers. Attackers will try to find the easiest way to attack you through the vulnerabilities. So this is key. What I want you to see here is, this is your growth for the next 5-10 years. You are going to be exponentially growing at this rate. Malaysia and Thailand, happy to say, even though they're starting off with 120 megawatts, you're going to have 500% growth. Thailand's going to be 550%. Why? Because your DCs are relocating here. Why? Because Singapore doesn't have any space. There's no land. Yeah. Even though it's the highest now in ASEAN, but there's no land. Water is expensive. They are doing desalination to actually help on with the servers. You know, AI actually burns up a lot of CPU and takes up a lot of transactions, so it gets hotter, right? So ASEAN countries, arguably around the same. Malaysia, Thailand, and Indonesia are slightly higher compared to the rest. Why? Okay. Malaysians have a proclivity to have many handphones. Okay? The handphone or mobility space in Malaysia is already saturated. It's saturated. So one of the reasons why your attack vector is high is because you're using technology. You're more adept at using technology. And it's quite common in ASEAN to have, especially in Malaysia, people to have 2 phones. So the moment you have more, your attack vector is higher. So these are some of the things that I hope that you can take back to digest and understand. But more importantly, this slide is important, and it's courtesy of ARC Group, which does data centers. So you need to understand this. Again, the constraints that you have. Any other questions, please? Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. I was just wondering if the increase in electricity, cross-border electricity trade will also increase the threat of cyber attacks in the region as a whole. Yeah.
Yes, for
as
sure.
well as through the, increase in subsea cables as well as overland connectors. Is that also something that increases the attack potential?
Yes. Okay. Two key things, yeah. In fact, a few more, but two key ones. One, smart grid. The moment you have smarter the grid, the second keyword is interconnectedness. The more you adopt the interconnectedness, you got no choice because you have to see the demand, right? You have to see the demand. Because you got no choice. You are already trying to look at this demand. You're looking at all of this capacity. So you're going to do two things. You like it or don't like it, you have to have smart grids. You have to have DER. Why? Because people are buying electric cars. People are charging their phones. People are having 2 phones. People are having 5 laptops, right? Everybody wants to have more, consume more and more. And you're running all kinds of agents, you're running all kinds of AI. So what does that mean? That translates to having smarter grids. Because if you don't have smarter grids, how are you going to manage the demand and consumption? You need to truly understand that it's caused by your demand, it's caused by your usage. So the second point is interconnectedness. So the more interconnected you are, the easier for the attacker, because now I can connect. Earlier it is isolated, now I can connect. That is why the solution might be, I'm just suggesting solution might be isolation. Isolation when it comes to key critical infrastructure and data. Why? So that it doesn't become vulnerable, it has less exploits. So you can always have this keyword called survivability. Survivability, why? Because you don't want a cascading effect on your infrastructure. Like what happened yesterday in Malaysia, 3 states went down. When the 3 states went down, what people don't realize is a lot of other things also went down. It's not just energy. It caused transportation, it caused logistical issues, it caused all kinds of things. You got a plethora of things, healthcare, everything needs electricity.
Say that you want to confine certain. I need this. You say that you want to confine certain data to like your air gap, where it's just housed in the place itself, so you're not exposed to outside, to these older hackers or whatever. But your smart grid somehow or other also a network for them to come in, right? But how do you isolate that? I don't know. Is there a way to isolate a power station or whatever it is, or how you evaluate what's the important point, right, that you need to protect, rather than the rest secondary, don't bother, like they can just fail, doesn't matter. Is there a study on that? How do you want to prioritize all this?
Okay. Fantastic question, Alvin. I think I love it because it's architectural design into this. So here's how you do the thinking, yeah? You need to think first before you apply. And thank you for that question. It's a very key question. So maybe the answer could be, okay, I gave you the example of data embassy earlier, right? What Estonia is doing. So you outsource the risk of critical data. Maybe that is one answer. So you always have a backup in another country. What backup do they have? They have the important national registry in another country. They have the key critical services in another country. So that could be one answer. Another answer could be, okay, this is the beauty of design. So a lot of you might not have been exposed to distributed platforms. So Google also has a distributed platform. You could have a GDC with consumer edge. So there could be a solution where you have non-critical components. I'll give you an example. A smart DER, a DER, which is non-critical. What I mean by non-critical means it can go down and yet your main spine or your main, grid doesn't go down. So why do you need a big platform? You don't need a big platform for that. So you could have a edge service, which is smaller components, segmented. We call it segmentation. So you isolate and segment each component separately so that the non-critical components can fail and yet it doesn't cause the entire grid to go down. So it's a smart way of creating, architecturing your solutions. You architecture for failure. That's what you need to do. Because why? The keyword again is resilience. You need to ensure survivability. Why survivability is key? Because you want to make sure the grid doesn't go down. But it is okay to have a DER go down. You can have a cell go down, no issue. So the edge computing could be a solution. That's one. Data embassy could be another solution where you de-risk. You de-risk your critical data. You actually allow another nation to have it. So this could be some, of course there are many other solutions, but these are some examples of how you do it. So you need to segment, micro-segment your DERs, your new sources of power in such a way that you can actually isolate and actually fail and test it to make sure that the grid is maintained. Because survivability is your ultimate objective. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay, another way, okay, I'm going to give you some extra bonus. Okay, when you have your SCADA and your ISC, right? So what you do is you create a DMZ segment. So you DMZ the hell out of it so that those things are isolated. So when a SCADA goes down, it's isolated only to its segment. It doesn't cause the grid to go down. That's another way of resolving your challenges. Okay? Last one, if any. Any other questions? All good? Okay. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I hope it has been something that you can take away in the sense that, we all want the best in ASEAN. And I believe that with some of these key takeaways, you'll be able to have a more secure and resilient future. So thank you again for your attention and engagement. Much appreciated from Gamuda DNeX Cloud.